She was this gun-toting, whiskey-drinking broad.
The super epic fucking broad.
She was a pioneer in the industry.
She's also so famous and so controversial.
So controversial.
So she's kind of a big fucking deal.
Her story is so incredible. She belongs on this podcast because she's a broad you should know. Hello and welcome to Broads You Should Know, the podcast about amazing and noteworthy women from history. I am your host, Sarah Gorski, and I am here today with a special guest who you've heard before, but not for a long time. We have Mr. Michael Slefinger. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm so excited to do this again.
I am so excited too. Audience, I invited Michael back. I should have had him back many times because he's just the best. But I don't know if you remember, a couple years ago now, holy moly, he did an episode for us on Vera Cheslavska, who was the gymnast at the Olympics who did like this major protest. And it was like, amongst other things, including being very amazing and winning medals. And she protested, but it was Belarus, right? No.
No, she was Czech, and she was protesting the Russian invasion, the whole, what was it called? The something spring.
Yes. Oh, well, and it was very dramatic. Anyway, if you haven't heard that episode, I replayed it, listeners, last week as a preparation for this week, because as you all, I'm sure, know, the Olympics have just concluded. They're over, right?
Oh, no, they're still going, but the gymnastics portion's all done.
The gymnastics is over.
Mm-hmm.
And this year brought us another blessed run of the GOAT, Simone Biles. And we've never covered her truly. Like, we've mentioned her in like an Olympics summary episode. But Michael, you happen to be, I think, her biggest fan in the entire world.
I mean, I've certainly got to be one of them, but I think very rightly so, her fan base is only expanding. So if there's someone who's a bigger fan, I am happy to see that there's plenty of room for everybody to be fans of Simone Biles.
And you know lots about gymnastics. You are, in fact, a gymnastics aficionado, I feel like.
It's the only sport I follow.
He follows no other sports, but could tell you everything about all gymnastics.
I don't know if that's true.
And
but
so I'm so pleased you were like available to come in, because I cannot wait for you to tell all of us. Like, so, okay, I'll start with saying, I obviously know and am like my own version of mildly obsessed with how amazing Simone is, but I don't quite know like the breadth of her work and like what exactly she's done that's so incredible besides just being very good at what she does. And also I don't really know her history. So I'm so excited. And probably most of the audience is probably on the same page as me, where we're like, oh, we're big fans, but we don't actually know very much except for the sound bites that the news has given us. Right.
Right.
So yeah, I'm just going to let you wait before we start, Michael, remind the audience. So who are you and what do you do?
The hell are you?
Who the hell are you?
I'm a writer. I am a sometimes actor. I was born outside Boston, but I grew up outside Chicago, so that's where a lot of my roots are. That's where all of our
that's how I know you
are from. Yep.
And I'm going to say you are a very good writer, by the way. Everybody should hire Michael for writing.
Thank you. Yeah, please. And also start making television again, because wow, it has been so dry.
Oh my goodness, I've heard that from everybody.
Yes. But also for the last, I guess, 12 years, a real diehard gymnastics fan. It's the only sport I watch. So imagine, your other friends who are sports fans who have, their baseball into basketball, maybe hockey seasons, and remember all the lineups and the stats that go along with that. I have gymnastics, end of list. There's 3, maybe 4 competitions a year. And so when those competitions come up, I get very excited. My neighbors have actually started watching with me. It started as a joke because I was like, oh, you've never met sports fan Michael. He's a whole thing. And now they're asking me like, hey, when is Worlds coming up? Because we want to come over and watch again. And so we watch on mute and I do the commentary.
Oh my God. You should probably do gymnastics commentary professionally.
NBC should absolutely hire me because I have notes on the quality of their commentary.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, okay. So let's dig in. So where do we even start with Simone? Like how?
Well, actually, right now is kind of the perfect time to do this podcast because, the gymnastics portion of the 2024 Olympics just ended, and Simone won the all around in glorious fashion, which is where on the same day you perform all four of the apparatuses. She won in 2016, and she is the first woman to win the all around more than once since Vera Cheslavska.
And wait, okay, so I have to ask. I'm going to ask lots of dumb questions because I
Please.
just don't know anything. Do all of the competitors always do the all around, or is it like very special ones only that can do all of the apparatuses?
That's actually a great question. Um, how do we? In the US, there is a lot of focus on the all around, on being able to do all four. I don't know how old you were in '96 when the Magnificent Seven won the Olympics, but there were seven people on the team at the time, and since then it was just generally thought that having that many people on the team favored countries that had a massive gymnastics infrastructure, and so the team's gotten smaller and smaller. At the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, the team was actually only four people. It has since expanded back to five. And so if you've only got that many people and three scores on each event count in the final, then kind of everybody needs to be able to do it, to do all four events. And usually there's room for a specialist. People might
Mm.
remember Michaela Maroney at the 2012 Olympics doing the most perfect vault of all time, or making a face when she got the silver medal that, Michaela's over it. She
Or
was a
this
vault.
year, everybody's obsessed with that guy who did the pommel horse, right? Who came in with his
Yes,
the nerd. That's an example of a specialist, right?
that's a perfect example of a specialist where their score on one event is so high that it justifies not having another backup on every event just to bring them. And so, yeah, Steven Netterasa, great example.
Great. I mean, I
Mhm.
basically only know the memes of the Olympics, obviously. Like, I know, like, the soundbite meme clips, including
You
him,
want
like, sleeping on the bench and then getting up and doing a perfect pummel
right?
horse.
Going full Clark Kent on us.
But then
Um,
there's Simone, who does everything very well.
yes, I guess if we back up a little bit, a competition like the Olympics or like Worlds will have a qualification day where kind of everybody gets to do everything they can do.
Okay.
Uh, and after that qualification day, the top people get to go into each final. So the top teams get to go in the team final. That's going to be one day. The top individual all around athletes, people who do all four, they get to do the all around on a different day. And then there's the four events, which are vault, uneven bars, balance beam, and the floor exercise. And each of them will have their own final.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So you could have the best vault in the team competition, but if you don't perform as well in the vault final, you're not going to get the gold medal. Does that make
Okay, that
sense?
makes sense. Yes, it does.
Um,
Thank you for us dumb people.
no, not dumb at all. It's one of those sports that doesn't, everybody doesn't do it. And again, there's only like four competitions a year for the elite gymnasts. You can watch NCAA, but the structure is a little different. And so it does seem a little bit strange. And then you break it down for people, it's like, oh, actually, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what makes one of the many things that has made Simone so special isn't just her exceptional ability, but also her consistency. That you can count on her in the team final, in the all around final, and in event finals.
Is it and it's true, right? Didn't she when she won her medal, did she pull that goat necklace out? That was this year, right? That just happened?
Yes, so she wore that a little bit in 2018 when she was making a comeback, and there were also sometimes like goats on her leotard, and you know people loved it and some people hate it because that's how the internet works. And so she said this time when she won again, she pulled it back out, and I think she said something like, some people like it and some people hate it, and so I had to do it. But the people who hate it have been awful quiet lately.
Well, I personally loved it. I just, like, love when
Me
an
too.
athlete's like, "You know what? I'm fucking good, and here's my goat necklace." Like, I appreciate it.
Exactly. And the other two people who've won the all around back to back at the Olympics did so in back to back, or they won back to back. They won their medals, in one Olympics and then the very next Olympics. Simone won in 2016. She didn't win in 2020, and then she won in 24. No one's ever done anything like that before. And so, yeah, pull the goat necklace out, wave that around, show everybody.
Okay, so take us backwards. How did Simone become the goat? What is her superhero origin story?
I mean, she really has a doozy of a story. I think she was born in '97, the year I started high school. Not to age myself. Uh,
I'm only slightly younger than you.
I thought so.
Only slightly.
Um,
Don't worry,
and
we're in good
her
company.
first few years were really tumultuous. She has three siblings. She got two older brothers and a younger sister, and their mom suffered from substance abuse. And so when she was really little, she and her siblings were taken out of her mom's care and put into foster care. And Ron and Nellie Biles, Ron is technically Simone's grandfather, but when they found out, they took the kids in. And then I think when Simone was around 5, Ron and his wife Nellie, who's not Simone's biological grandmother, but they adopted Simone and her little sister, and Ron's sister adopted Simone's two brothers. So the family got to stay together despite this, I mean, just a brutal first few years. And she doesn't talk about it a lot, but every so often she will mention like worrying what they were going to eat. When they went into foster care, worrying about who was going to get separated and, trying to keep an eye on her younger sister. And when she describes that, they're very, they're instincts that anybody can relate to, but that started when she was 3. She was thinking that way at 3 years old. I didn't have those concerns at 3. Most people don't. A child
No, I
isn't
have
supposed to.
like a suburban shelter, like
Exactly. Um, and from that, I've always kind of got an idea that her family is really close. They were always at competitions, always very supportive. Um, but she's got a documentary on Netflix. The first 2 episodes came out before the Olympics. I think it's called Simone Biles Rising. And the next 2 episodes are going to come out in the fall because they actually filmed during the Olympics. And in those first 2 episodes, you really see how close this family unit is. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful story of resilience. But this was not the typical gymnastic story of someone's, like their older siblings did gymnastics and she tagged along.
right.
When she was 6, she was on a class field trip. I don't remember where they were supposed to go, but it rained that day, one of the few times it rains in Texas. And so they diverted and they decided to go to a gym instead. And she was bouncing around and saw some of the things the athletes were doing. She's like, I can do that. And so people at the gym immediately took notice and sent her home with a note being like, give this to your parents and tell them that you need to be taking gymnastics classes. And that's how she got into it. If it
Oh
had rained that
man.
day, maybe she would have run track.
Oh my god.
Isn't that wild?
Wild.
And then there was
Wild.
another, what I consider to be a really important turning point for her profession. I mean, I don't know her. So this is,
You
entirely an
could know
observer's
her.
perspective. What do you say?
You could know her. You could be her best
One
friend.
day.
Just doesn't.
Yes. I don't yet. And I don't know that we have anything in common. I think I watch a lot more gymnastics than she does. Uh, but at 8, I believe, she started being coached by a woman named Amy Borman. And Amy coached her up through the 2016 Olympics when Simone won the first of her 4 gold medals. And Amy's actually got a book coming out soon about this that I have pre-ordered and I'm very excited to read.
Oh
And
my
my
god.
understanding is that Amy had never coached an elite gymnast before, which meant she wasn't steeped in that really problematic USA gymnastics culture.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
So
she
she
was
did things
just like
differently.
local, like amateur. I hate to say amateur, but like that's the word for it, right? When it's not professional.
I think so. Yeah. So the way that gymnastics works is that there are, regional up to national competitions. I don't even know what they're called. And there's based on the skills that you perform, it determines what level you compete at. There's levels 1 through 10, and 10 is kind of the 10 is the highest that you can go, and the place where you go if you're trying to get a gymnastics scholarship and compete in NCAA.
Mm,
And
okay.
then above that is what's called elite gymnastics, which is the people who compete under USA Gymnastics, the people who get sent on international assignments, the people who, from that pool, the world and Olympic teams are chosen. I don't think Amy had ever coached somebody at that level before.
Okay.
And then somebody like Simone comes along.
And wait, was Amy like were they in the same location? Like Amy was in Texas also and like Or
Yes.
like did they relocate and stuff?
I they I don't believe they did. I think Amy was just in charge of like women's gymnastics at that gym. Again, I might be wrong about this because the book isn't out yet.
Oh.
Um, but they developed a really tight relationship, and Amy had a lot of her own ideas about how to develop an athlete. USA Gymnastics was very much, um,
It was a machine,
you
right?
make your athlete as obedient as possible, and you teach them to kind of like ignore the signs that their bodies tell them. And if they say they're tired, it's because they're lazy. And you make them. I mean, it was almost a military level of obedience, and and they ate like ballerinas, which like literally not enough calories for your body to heal and grow muscles. And one of the things that Amy talks about is that Simone's parents were involved in every decision, and that Simone guided a lot of the training. Like, yes, she was this phenomenal talent, but if she got bored with something, then she didn't want to do it anymore. And Amy was like, well, then, if we keep forcing her to do it, she's going to lose her interest. She's going to quit gymnastics altogether. Or if, we tell her that she needs to do something that she doesn't want to do, then she might hurt herself. And I believe Simone has her first like legit injury of her career kind of right now. Like she got that far without it.
Wow.
Um,
So it's also, I think I heard this the other day. Maybe I can't remember if I read it or if I heard it on NPR or something, but was it also part of the gymnastics culture too, that like part of the starvation kind of and like the lack of nutrient, like strength nutrient quality, like, and they also like really wanted all of their gymnasts to be so young, and they like kept this like really young, like this pen of really young women competing, and not even just the US, it seems like. And it seems like now we're finally starting to like move away from that model, right?
yeah, I mean, when they were younger, they were more obedient. You literally treated them like children. And, if they didn't do what you wanted, then they got in trouble and you yelled at them and sometimes abused them.
And then they
I,
broke
s-
their feet while they competed on television and shit, right?
they did that. And then also a serial sexual abuser, unlike anything any other sport had ever seen, was able to abuse for 20, 25 years without being caught.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That fucking
Um, and so I mean, obviously Simone's an incredible talent and works very, very, very hard and works smart. Um, I think without the voice of someone like an Amy Borman, you don't have a Simone Biles. Um, so
so oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
the the way that elite team trains. Um, so the people who started that were Bella and Marta Caroli, and they started in the like early 2000s. Like the U.S. team wins in '96, and then kind of crumpled, and so there needed to be like a national organizing force. And they came from Romania, where parents would send their young children to a training facility to live, to train to be elite level gymnasts. And obviously, American parents were never going to go for that. And so they came up with this kind of compromise where once a month, the national team would gather at this training facility at the Caroli's Ranch in Texas. And, you'd kind of verify what you were working on. You would, develop a training plan and then also show everybody what you could do. And again, from that, world and Olympic teams were chosen. Um, and the first time that Simone was invited to that, uh, she went and people were very positive about what she could do. She was a very powerful gymnast, but maybe not the most precise at that point. And Marta Caroli, who was in charge of the program at that time, really laid into her and told her that she was lazy, she wasn't working hard enough, she was sloppy. And Simone like didn't know the rules. She didn't know, or the unwritten rules. She didn't know the culture at all. She'd never been. And Simone kind of likes to do things her own way, and she likes to have fun. And that's not what USA Gymnastics was about. USA Gymnastics was about being obedient.
And she was how
And
old at this moment again?
I want to say she was like 12 or 13 because she was still a junior. You turned senior the year that you turned 16. And this was junior year. And so you know, Amy has talked about how Simone got yelled at because her like uneven bar skills weren't up to snuff, and she was kind of sloppy. And then Simone's mom talks about like, and it was her attitude. Like Marta was used to saying jump and people saying how high, and Simone was just kind of like, I don't feel like jumping.
People who
And
love
so
power don't love boundaries.
oh, that's exactly right. And so the next camp was like 3-4 weeks away, and when the invitation came, Amy had a conversation with Simone and her parents, and they were like, like Simone had a horrible time. She's kind of like still working her confidence back. If we keep forcing her to go, maybe she'll quit gymnastics. And so they declined the invitation, which
Did anyone
was
ever decline the Carolis? No, right?
honestly, I didn't know you could. I didn't know that was an option. And then they
I
weren't
love
invited
this
back for like,
already.
yeah, they weren't invited back for like another year because they snubbed them. And Amy was very clear, like, no, no, we're doing this our way. Simone's allowed to smile when she competes, and nobody else was. Um, and so then she comes back as a junior. She did fine. 2013 was the year that she turned 16. So that's the year she can go to senior competitions. She
Mm.
wins nationals, kind of a surprise. And then she goes to worlds and she wins the all around and floor exercise and medaled on vault and medaled on beam and made the uneven bars final. And Sarah, that's all of them. That's all the categories.
And that's without the Carolis.
No, no, she was part of the system at that point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think she like officially joined the system like the year or two before she turned senior.
Wow.
Um, and she was fine when she was younger, but really it's like started leveling up like the exact year she needed to in 2013. Uh, and I didn't, that was the last world competition that I did not watch live. And I remember afterwards seeing on Twitter, like the few gymnastics people I follow being like, so there's this person you need to know about. We're not even sure how to pronounce her name yet, but she just won everything. So I guess we need to learn.
So they didn't know
Uh,
how to pronounce Simone.
uh, I don't remember where the competition was, but the announcer pronounced it Simone because there was an E on the end.
Oh, must have been French or something then.
I, something. Um, and so I genuinely thought, because the first few videos I watched, that's how it was said. So I thought that was how you said her name.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh, that's so
yeah.
funny.
Um, and then since then, she hasn't gone to a world competition without winning the all around, without winning floor, without medaling on vault, without medaling on beam. Yeah, she's been 6 times, and she's done that every single time. And so, like you asked, what was her origin story? Like, how did she become the GOAT? There was an athlete who won the all around 3 times. Simone's won it 6.
Oh my gosh.
There are athletes who've won the floor exercise, I think 3 times. There's one or two who's won it 3 times. Simone has won it 6 times. There are 2 athletes who've won the balance beam twice. This is all at the World Championships, not the Olympics.
Right.
There are 2 athletes who've won balance beam twice. Balance beam is the least consistent of all the gymnastics apparatus because it is less than 4 inches wide, and you can be amazing. And if you're a millimeter off, then you fall.
Yeah.
And so being consistent on balance beam is nearly impossible. So only 2 gymnasts have ever won more than once. Simone's won 4 times. She's also the only athlete to win balance beam back to back. And my favorite, I guess you'd call it a stat or a story about her that somehow just like I've never seen in any story or anything. I only did this because of my own nerdy calculations. Uh, 2015 World Championships. So this is Simone's third World Championships. And it's also the year before the 2016 Olympics, her first Olympics. World Championships is a way to qualify to the Olympics. So the World Championships the year before the Olympics is always a big fucking deal. Am I allowed to say that? I am,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, we swear
Uh,
on this podcast. Hell
right, and
yeah.
I remembered in your email. Yep, we are marked explicit.
Because I
um,
don't want to censor myself. I like swearing.
same.
My mom
Uh,
doesn't, but I like it.
that's right. I worked in elementary schools for so long that I'm allowed to swear again. Uh, so there's the qualifying day that I told you about, where kind of everybody does everything and they see who falls where. It's the year before the Olympics. Everyone was kind of like trying their best. It was kind of a messy qualification day. Everybody had a rough day except Simone. So she qualifies for the all around in first place to the surprise of nobody. She qualified ahead of second place, I believe, was a Swiss athlete by almost 4 points.
That's a crazy amount.
It's a crazy amount. In I think it was 2005, the all-around competition was determined by 1/1000th of a point.
Right. They're very close
Simone,
usually. Tenths
yes,
and thousands, hundredths and thousandths of points, right?
and she was almost 4 full points ahead. The top 24 gymnasts qualify into the all-around. If you went from first place down to second place, that's almost 4 points. And then if you went from second place down another 4 points, it covered the scores of more than 40 gymnasts. So going into the all-around competition, the scores between second place and last place were closer than second place and first place because Simone was in first. So when people talk about her being the GOAT or her being so far ahead, like there isn't an equivalent in another sport. There isn't another sport where someone hasn't lost for 13 years or 12 years, excuse me. There's no way to do that. I saw Allie Raisman, three-time Olympic gold medalist, was Simone's teammate in 2016, one of the best American gymnasts ever to put on a leotard. And she was in this kind of like panel conversation, and she talked about, getting ready for the 2016 Olympics. She'd won the floor exercise in 2012 before Simone was a senior. Once she's there with Simone, the goal is silver because Simone's getting the gold. And this other athlete was like, no, 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 you can't think about that. Then you're setting yourself up for failure. And Allie had to be like, you don't understand. There's nobody like this in your sport. There's nobody who's been this far ahead.
Yeah.
LeBron James loses games. Serena Williams lost tennis matches. Michael Jordan lost. Michael Jordan even tried baseball. Uh, Simone Biles has not been to an all-around competition at either Worlds or the Olympics or any other competition that she has lost since the spring of 2013.
That's amazing.
Like she's just that far ahead. And so it's fun to see people say that she's the GOAT who, like watch a little bit of gymnastics during the Olympics every 4 years. It is kind of hard to contextualize for other sports fans. There isn't a parallel. Like when there are conversations about who's, the greatest athlete in the world, I'm like, this is easy. Uh,
Man. So, wow, she's never lost.
no. Now, some people would say that she did in 2020 when she had I guess it was the 2020 Olympics in 2021. She got the twisties
Right.
and
Oh, I want
pulled
to talk
out
about
great. She did an interview, I think it was earlier this year on a podcast. Damn it, and I'm gonna forget the name. Who's Your Daddy, maybe? Um, and she knows the host, this woman who is a great interviewer, and they had this long conversation, and they talked about the twisties in a way that it made sense to me, someone who doesn't do gymnastics. And then I've heard some other things that have been really helpful. One was that a lot of the first things you have to learn in gymnastics um, are to kind of like overpower your uh, self protection instincts. Like when you're flipping through the air, it's your body's natural instinct to like figure out where the ground is, slow down, and be safe.
Right.
And you kind of have to learn to override that to be able to do a flip and know, like, no, no, I know where my feet are. It's going to be okay. Those instincts have developed over millions of years. Like that's evolution. You have to override those. The twisties is when those instincts are like, I think we're right. And so you start doing these things that you've trained years and years and years, and all of a sudden your body's like, I don't think I'm supposed to do this anymore, even though you know how. And so basically, like, imagine when you're driving a car, there are hundreds of decisions that you make every minute that you aren't making consciously. When you go to when you go to switch into the left lane, you don't manually tell your hand, okay, hit the turn signal, check your blind spot, check your mirror, go this amount, hit the gas this much so that you slowly go, you don't go too fast, but don't go so slow that the person behind you hits you. Like you've just honed all of those abilities. Now imagine if when you were driving, you had to manually tell your body to do all of those things because it just forgot how.
Yeah. So wait, so we should hold on a second. and give the audience, in case the audience doesn't know what we're fucking talking about.
Oh, right.
Because audience, I'm here for you. If you are not familiar with what we're talking about with the twisties, and Michael, you'll correct the things I get wrong, I'm sure.
Mhm.
But in 2020 at the Olympics, right?
Yes.
Simone got the twisties.
Hmm.
So this sense of kind of like equilibrium and upside down, like lack of fear that gymnasts develop, and she ended up dropping out. Correct? She dropped out of the Olympics.
She made it there. She showed up through to the qualifying round,
Right.
qualified for every event final, but was a little off. Um, and then the first competition for a medal is the team competition. And they went to vault first. And you can see in the video in the competition that like something goes wrong, even if you don't know what she's supposed to do. If you can actually find a video of her warm up vault, because they get a little warm up before they start, you can see her in the air panicking and looking for the ground. It's one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my gosh.
And so she performs a vault, not the one she planned to. Um, a lesser athlete would have snapped their leg. She manages to not hurt herself somehow.
Right.
And then after that point in the team competition, she withdrew. So the rest of the team did the rest of the competition without her. They still managed to take silver. Um, and then in all of so sh then for the subsequent competitions, the individual all around competition and then all the events, she withdrew one at a time to try to see if she could build herself up. The last competition was balance beam, and she and her coaches all week kind of came up with a routine that involved less twisting, that
Mm,
involved her doing a dismount she hadn't done since she was like 12.
mm.
Um, and they really cut a lot of the difficulty out of the routine, and she still managed to get bronze.
Wow. And
Yeah,
that's really unusual, right? Because they had been planning her routine like for months leading up, right?
years.
Months and years.
Oh yeah. You don't
Yeah.
Gymnastics is one of those things where it's so precise that once you get a routine down, you stick with it. On something like uneven bars, Sunisa Lee, who won the all around in between Simone's two wins, um, she had a lot of things that involved connecting skills. And she got so good that if in the middle of her routine, if the rhythm felt a little bit off, she would kind of move a connection and do something else. But that is that is the
Like
very, very,
gymnastics
very
improv.
top.
That's
Yes.
crazy.
Yes. Yeah. And so you do the same routine over and over and over again.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah. So her even like deciding to drop. So her getting the twisties and like withdrawing from events. Do people do that often in gymnastics? Does like barring like actual injury where you literally hurt yourself and you cannot do it, which they used to
That's
power through. Um, like
right.
that doesn't happen often, right?
The only other time I've seen somebody withdraw mid competition was because of an injury, and so they treated this like a mental injury, which is exactly what it was.
Mhm.
And there's countless videos that you can look at. They're not labeled. We didn't talk about it, but it's gymnasts like who are clearly trying to power through, even though they have the twisties. And what you see them do is like panic and hurt themselves, or have like really uncharacteristic falls on skills that they know how to do. But you see this kind of like dead look in their eyes that you saw in gymnasts like the entire time I was growing up through the early 2000s, where like they're being robotic and they're doing what they're supposed to do and they're not listening to their bodies.
Mm.
And when it comes to people talking about Simone being the GOAT, yeah, there's the medal haul. Yes, there are the records that I mentioned. And honestly, I mentioned maybe a third of the world records that Simone holds.
Yeah.
For me, what makes her the greatest of all time is that on the biggest stage in the world, when more eyes were on her than ever before, because also this was she was returning. Usually, gymnasts have a really short career, and so she could be promoted as the face of the of the Olympics. Um, but it was also the pandemic Olympics.
That's
Folks
right.
were home,
Hmm.
including Simone's family. First competition they hadn't been at.
Oh,
And if you
You
watch this documentary, there's a really beautiful extended sequence. It's the first time her mom hadn't done her hair before a competition. She didn't have them with her.
Do they think like obviously maybe we'll never know, but do they think that might have been part of the twisties too? Is just like the support network she was used to, just like not being able to be the same network it always had been?
That was a huge part of it. There was an inordinate amount of pressure on her. The world has never seen a gymnast like this. The U.S. certainly hasn't. Um, and it was her first time going back to the Olympics since that whole scandal with the abusive doctor
Yeah,
came to
very
light. And she became a voice after that in a way that she never had been before. And in 2018, when she was first making her comeback, she talked about one of the main reasons that she chose to come back was because at that point she was the only survivor who was still competing, and that if she was there, USA Gymnastics couldn't pretend like everything was okay. That her presence forced them to deal with this in a way that they wouldn't if she wasn't there. There was a lot on her shoulders. And when all of the cameras were on her, when the light was the brightest, she said, my physical health and mental health are more important than an Olympic medal. I can't think of a time when someone said that before.
I can't either. I remember this moment, Michael, and obviously I'm not the big fan you are, but I
It was
specifically
huge.
remember this moment where a woman chose her well-being over like whatever you want to call it, the glory or
Yeah.
like the U.S. pressure to whatever to win, like, and it
And
was
if
so
anybody,
powerful to me.
it was the front story on New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, everybody. Like that was the big thing. Simone Biles pulls out. And it needed to be the best of all time who did that, because if anybody else did, you could just say, oh, you knew you were going to lose,
Yeah,
or just be dismissive, like, oh, you weren't going to do as well as you could. Everyone knew that Simone was the best in the world. She wasn't at her best that day, and she still qualified in first place in the all around. She was still going to win.
right.
In 2018 at the World Championship, she had a kidney stone. In the all around, she sat down her vault, she fell off the balance beam, she still won the all around. Like there was no touching her. She was the best.
Yeah,
And there was and so it took her saying that's not as important. And the the shift that has caused across all sports, you know, elevating the conversation of mental health, talking about mental health as part of your physical health, because it is. Because especially with a sport like gymnastics, if you're not mentally there, you will hurt yourself.
yeah.
There's a
I think that's
great
true with a lot of sports, and more sports than they admit.
yes,
Like more sports than because so many sports are like have like this air of toxic masculinity to them as well, where
yeah,
mental health is just like not something we talk about. But
it's a
like,
weakness.
yeah, but it's the opposite because then she comes back. She takes the time to heal and to get her head like whatever's going on in her head to figure it out and to work through it. And then she comes back and she destroys it this year.
She does. And anytime somebody asks her about it, she's talking about how she's doing therapy every week, how important that is. How when she was in Paris at the Olympics, her therapist was doing early morning sessions with her just to make sure that she was where she needed to be. Like, there was no discussion of that when I was growing up.
No.
Mental health was considered a weakness. That was a problem. You don't talk about it, you just power through. Uh, and she didn't say, she showed
Yeah.
this is the way to do it.
And she continues to show. She didn't like just do
Continues
it
to.
for a soundbite. She like is talking about it constantly.
Yep. But more importantly, walking the walk. And for me, I mean, again, huge gymnastics fan. I could really have spent this whole hour rattling off statistics.
You
Um,
could have, and I told you not to.
you did, and I'm so grateful that you gave me that heads up because I have a
Because I
list,
get lost and I forget right away.
right? But where I think it was Ali Raisman talked about the difference between a winner and a champion. And a winner, and actually, I think we talked about this when we talked about Vera Czeslavska, her making that transition, because the first time she went to the Olympics, she won a bunch of gold medals, and the second time she was a champion, she took a stand. Um, when Simone Biles, I mean, I think for a lot of sports historians when she came back and won the all around again and won the team medal again and won vault a second time. First person to win a gold medal on the vault at the Olympics twice since Vera Cheslavska. They're the only two people who've done it. Um, all of that kind of cements her as the greatest of all time. She has more world Olympic medals than any gymnast in history, male or female. That makes her the GOAT. For me, it's that sports in general will never be the same because of her. And it's not because she can land a Yurchenko double pike. It's because she knew when not to.
Wow.
Yeah, she's
That almost,
astonishing.
that almost made me cry just now. That made me emotional. Um,
I mean, yeah, it was during the team competition when she pulled out. And so this year at the 2024 Olympics, when she did her vault in the team final and did amazing and has this huge smile when she finished, I was watching live very early in the morning and I burst into tears. It was like I wasn't just watching athletic greatness, I was watching wellness demonstrated. Uh, and there's a level of triumph there that you can't fabricate. You can't make that up.
oh. I mean, it's not a show she's putting on for people. It's not like a
Mm-mm.
performance. It's her being
There's
her
a great
truest self.
yeah. There's a great clip that I that has stuck with me since the day she pulled out. There before the decision was made final. There's a video of her on the sides, and the mic picks up her saying, "I don't want to do something stupid." And before Simone Biles, doing something stupid would have been letting fear get in the way of your pursuit of a gold medal. And after Simone Biles, doing something stupid means putting a gold medal ahead of your well being. And that is, that's the big shift for me. Um, and then there's all these videos of her, like at nationals this year, Sunisa Lee, uh, again, one of the greatest gymnasts the US has ever seen, uh, won the all around in Tokyo, won another all around medal just here in Paris. Um, she has been coming back from a couple of really bad kidney illnesses and was told by her doctors that she would never do gymnastics again. And she said, well, too bad. Uh, and worked her ass off in a healthy way to get here. And at nationals, something was going on with her vault and she was kind of shaky. And there's a great video where the mic picks up Simone saying to her, "Do you want me to be there?" And so in the middle, and Simone's competing. She wasn't watching. She was doing her own stuff. But she took time to go, or maybe it was uneven bars. Like after vault, you go to bars. And so she went to bars and she was right there cheering on Suni next to Suni's coach, just to be like, we're all here for you. They don't train together. They don't live in the same state.
Yeah.
But she has taken on this leadership role in the most elegant and powerful way.
It's so palpable, like as a novice watcher who just like watches, who watched the some of the Olymp. I think I watched some of the qualifiers. I don't even think I watched the final. I admit to you, it's been a busy couple of weeks, but it's palpable in the face of the team and in the way that they interact.
Yeah.
It was just like true. I don't even want to say friendship, but like trust and like
Camaraderie.
true like love and joy. And even the I know the other viral thing from this year was like they acknowledged the Brazilian women, right, who and
Oh,
they bow not bowed to her but sort of bowed
oh
to
yeah, they
her,
did.
is that right? And they
So
like what was
Simone
that
has
moment?
never Simone has never gotten anything but gold on the floor exercise at the World or the Olympics.
Yeah.
Um, and I've heard something that tells me that the little bit of an injury that she kind of downplayed at the Olympics this year was actually a bigger deal than she is letting on. I think we're going to find out when the next two episodes of this documentary drop in the fall.
Oh, snap.
But her calf has really been bothering her, and she did not have the control on her landings that she normally does. And so, despite going in with a much, much higher difficulty score than anybody else, and having fairly clean landings on two of her skills, she bounced out of bounds with both feet, which added up to 6/10 of deduction, and she took silver. And it's very close between her and Rebecca Andrade, this athlete from Brazil who in 2020 was the gold medalist on vault at the 2020 Olympics and the 2024 Olympics, silver medalist in the all around. Uh, I think is certainly the greatest gymnast that Brazil's ever produced, but one of the great gymnasts of all time. And she's the only gymnast who's ever been able to really challenge Simone
Yeah.
on the vault, and then even a little bit in the all around. And instead of that, like pitting girls against girls narrative that the media loves so much, Simone and Rebecca have gone out of their way for the last few years to talk about how incredible the other is. And so when
I just
Simone
love
didn't,
that. That's
it's
amazing
it's gorgeous.
and
Uh,
unprecedented, really. Like,
and it's more fun to watch them cheering on each other. So when Simone doesn't have the performance and she gets silver, she doesn't burst into tears. She cheers for Rebecca. And another American, Jordan Childs, took bronze, and so they were up on the podium. Bronze gets announced first, steps on the podium, and then silver. And so there's Simone, and the two of them had worked out that when they announced Rebecca, because they were on either side of her, they were going to turn and bow to her as kind of like a coronation. Like Simone had her right at the top, and now we get to honor Rebecca. And their whole thing was like, there's no reason to wait for someone to retire to give them her flowers. Give them
yeah.
now. She
Oh, I
deserves
just
it.
got the chills when you said that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Again, something that, before Simone, A, the gymnasts weren't allowed to smile. B, like you didn't cheer on your competitors because they were your competitors. But like there's no defense in gymnastics. It's not a head-to-head sport. You do your best and someone else does theirs, and whoever's is better happens to get the medal that day. And
right.
so there's no need for the hostility that is often grafted onto the sport. In 2008, Nastia Liukin and Shawn Johnson were the best two gymnasts in the world. They took gold and silver at the Olympics in the all around. They were both Americans. And there was all this talk about their rivalry between the two of them because they were very different gymnasts.
Mm.
And afterwards, they talked about being oblivious to that conversation because, like, they were roommates at the Olympics. They're still friends. They liked cheering each other on. Everyone else needed them to be enemies. And they were like, that's not how that works. And so
Yeah.
now in 2024, we get to see the more accurate version of that, of the athletes, making their own voice more important and saying, yeah, this is how we're going to do things. And no, it's not the decorum that you're used to where we just stand here politely. Instead, we're going to show who we really are and what we care about.
I mean, is it safe to say that, like, obviously she didn't do it totally alone, but Simone has changed the face of gymnastics?
Uh,
Like the not literally the face, like, obviously, but like that old structure and that old unhealthy, like, by refusing to, like, be a part of those unhealthy structures, she's transformed the sport, right?
there are so many ways to say yes to that question. Uh, yes, by choosing to have fun, as far back as 2013, like, giggling as she would walk off the floor after one of her performances, or like, if she makes an uncharacteristic mistake and trips on the floor exercise like she did in the final at Worlds last year, and like looking at the camera and rolling her eyes at herself in the middle of her routine, bringing that level of personality and freedom and demonstrating it changed the sport. Also, in 2012, Gabby Douglas became the first Black athlete to win the women's all around at the Olympics. In 2013, Simone Biles became the first Black athlete to win the all around at the World Championships. And there was a little bit of blowback from that. There was even an Italian athlete afterwards said something to the effect of like, well, maybe if I painted my face black, I could start winning medals too. Uh, she
What? So
couldn't.
there
She
was
was
blow. So there was racist blowback.
absolutely
Obviously,
there was.
of course
But
there was.
now, if you look in, an average gym in America, it's not a bunch of white girls and one black girl. There's everybody in there. And Gabby won in 2012. Simone won in 2016. Sunisa Lee won in 2020, the first Asian American gymnast to win, or first Asian gymnast to win, and also the first Hmong American to win a gold medal, I think, in any sport. So like, there's the mental health aspect, there's the camaraderie among gymnasts, there's the racial integration, and then and then there's the 5 skills that are named after Simone in the code of points that no one had ever done before.
Yeah, tell us more about that. So there's things named after her because she literally did them for the first time.
Yes. So part of what makes gymnastics difficult for a casual viewer is that the commentators, when they're talking about the skills that they're doing, they're all named after the first athlete to do it. So you don't know the difference between a Yurchenko and a Sukahara vault because the names themselves don't really suggest
Yeah,
anything.
I don't know. It's all Greek to me.
Right. Um, and so there's the code of points where every skill that a gymnast can perform has a point value associated with it. Every vault you can do, every tumbling pass that you can do on the floor exercise, if you're going to get points for it, it's got to be in the code of points.
Based on
If
how difficult the move is, right?
correct.
Okay.
Um, and if you want to add a skill to the code of points that isn't currently in there, you have to submit it to the International Technical Committee. They will tell you what the point value will be, and then you have to successfully perform that skill at an international competition. It used to just be Worlds or the Olympics. Now there are other ones that can do it. And she got her first one at her first World Championships. Uh, she does a double layout on the floor exercise where you do a double flip, but you're basically like in standing position. You're not tucked or anything. You are flipping completely laid out,
Like a little
which,
pencil spinning
like
around.
pencil, which people had done before. But right before she lands, she adds a just a half twist, so she's facing out, so it's a blind landing. And she does it so quickly, it's actually hard to see unless you watch in slow motion.
Oh my God.
Uh, it's a signature skill. It's been in every floor exercise she's done since then. It is so much fun to watch. And then this year at the 2024 Olympics, for the very first time, another athlete performed it. No one else has done it. Yeah, it was really exciting. Um,
It has to be like a special, like, yeah, they're doing my shit. Yeah.
oh, can you imagine? Like, getting it named after yourself is one thing; it's permanently in the book. But from then on, if a commentator is watching that routine, they're like, "And she just successfully did the Biles."
The Biles.
That's incredible.
She's done a few movements. Is it like the Biles 1, the Biles 2, the Biles 3, or what do they call
That's
them?
exactly right. Yes. So, but based on each apparatus. So that's the Biles 1 on floor. The Biles 2 on floor is she does a double backflip, but she also does 3 twists at the same time. So she's actually like she's turning on 2 different axes at the same time. And
One axis. I can't do anything.
I can usually get a cartwheel around with a
I
lot
can
of effort.
do a cartwheel, but that's like -4 points because it's so dumb, right? At that level.
Right. Uh, and so, what was the if a gymnast can do a backflip, like laid out and twist 3 times, you can still get a really good score for that. Simone does that plus an extra flip, and all tucked up. No one's coming near that. There are a few male gymnasts who've done it, but I don't like it doesn't get competed. I don't think there was a male gymnast at the Olympics this year who was doing it. And when Simone does it, at one point NBC clocked her clearing 12 feet of height.
I heard that.
She's only 4'8", which means if you started at 4'8", 4'10", something, she's tiny. Uh, if you started at 12 feet and then went down that much, that means that she could have cleared every player in the NBA. That's how high she's going.
Oh my God. She's unreal.
Yep. So that's the Biles 2 on floor. She has 2 on vault. One she performed in 2018 and has not performed since. I think she even said she can't do it anymore, but it's an insanely difficult vault. There's a vault that both she and Rebecca Andrade did in the vault final. So the gold and silver medalists both performed this in the vault final. And I think the bronze medalist did also. That's called a chung. That is, you do a round off and then you do a half twist before you hit the vaulting table, and then 1.5 twists in the air. A Biles is 2 twists in the air. So the chung is one of the hardest vaults in the code. Simone did an extra half turn after that. And then there's her signature vault, which is the Yurchenko double pike, where she does one more flip than everybody else does in the pike position. And it's absolutely breathtaking. And she talks about being the most terrifying thing.
Oh my God. Okay, so I'm gonna have to look these clips up and put them on the website too. So listeners,
Oh
check the
yeah,
website, and we'll put some of these clips in there, and the YouTube channel too. We'll queue up a few of them for you guys, so you can see some of this cool stuff Michael's talking about. Because I, for one, can't actually even like picture what you're saying because
it is kind of
facially, I'm
hard
like,
to.
I have no idea what what
Yeah,
happens.
I'll see if I can find clips to send you. And then the last one's named after her is she does a double twisting double tug off of the balance beam, which uh, was just considered impossible until she just went ahead and did it one day.
Just like you do, when you're the goat, you just do it. Michael, this is like, and she took down those fucking abusers. Man, she did everything.
She testified before Congress. Um, she came out as an abuse victim in 2018, which was, I think, a little over a year after the scandal first broke. Um, and her mom's talked about this a little bit. I don't know that she really considered herself an abuse victim at first and really needs to kind of like wrap her brain around all of that.
Which is normal. I feel like
It
in
is.
cases, in these like mass cases where like so many people were
A lot of people, you blame
basically
yourself
groomed,
for,
really.
yep.
You were groomed
Oh,
to
very
keep
much so.
it a secret and to not believe it was abuse.
At that point, the Carollis were no longer in charge of USA Gymnastics, but camp was held every month at their ranch still, which for many athletes, Simone included, was where the abuse took place. And after she came forward, she tweeted something about how she couldn't imagine having to go back to camp every month, uh, knowing that that's where all of this happened. And by the end of the month, the camp had closed and USA Gymnastics has never gone back. Uh, because of what she said. There was
Did
a
she
woman
just
who
have
took
more
over.
clout than other people? Do you like, is that is
Yes,
like
yeah,
her clout is what really pushed it?
her clout,
We
and
shouldn't need
also
that clout to push a decision like that, for fuck's sake, but
no, her clout, and then also her like the kind of the plain way that she said it that made it so clear to people what was being asked of these athletes is to go back to the site of your abuse and prove your worth as a gymnast. Like that's insane.
build a new house,
Um, yeah, uh,
create a new place with a different yeah, man.
and at
And
nationals that
not
year,
everybody can do that because it takes a lot to stand up in the face of like, in the face of abuse like that. That is not, it is very brave to do that. And I don't mean that to be sort of any sort of derogatory comment to people who don't do that, because it is so, I can't even imagine how
no,
hard it must be.
it's a private decision. She had to go through all of the realization on her own before going public because she knew the pressure that was going to come with going public.
Right.
She went public, I think, in January of 2018 at nationals that year, which would have been about 6 months later. She showed up in a teal uh, leotard, teal being the ribbon color of sexual assault survivors. And I mean, if you want to see a heartbreaking interview, there's a video of her at nationals sitting on the podium, journalists all around her, talking about why she came back. And then she bursts into tears and says, USA Gymnastics had one job, that was to keep us safe, and they couldn't even do that. And she was honest when people would have preferred her to be polite.
Of course. But look at how far honesty got in terms of like eliminating that fucking cycle of abuse. Like it takes honesty and not politeness to do that.
She could have avoided a lot of criticism. She has been plagued with criticism since she first came up, and always will be. People, change makers are. She could have lived a much quieter, more peaceful life, and instead she chose to make a difference over and over and over. So, like, congrats on the medals, but that's why she's the greatest.
She's the greatest.
Hmm.
Michael, thank you so much. What an amazing. Okay, this was one of the like most in-depth, knowledgeable episodes I've done in such a long time. I'm so glad and grateful that you were able to come and tell us about Simone. She truly unmatched, unparalleled,
Yeah,
not just in
I'm so.
athletics, just like as a human being, and a woman specifically. Wow.
Oh, and also, she's really fun to watch. I
I've
suppose I could
always
throw that in
thought
there also.
that. Like when you watch her, there's just that joy, that life. And I just like remember as a kid not seeing that in sports. Like I didn't watch a lot of
No.
sports, I will admit to everybody. I'm sure this is shocking to everyone. I did not watch a lot of sports, but the joy is not palpable very often. And
Especially
so
in gymnastics.
especially in gymnastics and especially at the Olympics
Uh-huh.
when pressure feels high and like, everyone's competing and she's just unreal and she's the GOAT.
But I remember growing up outside Chicago in the 90s and going to see Michael Jordan, going to see the Bulls and Michael Jordan was playing. And even I, who did not play basketball, like you could tell that guy is playing a different game than everybody else.
That's right.
Uh, Simone isn't just doing gymnastics, she's changing the world.
She's changing the world. To learn more about Simone Biles, see pictures of her and some of the videos from this episode that we talked about, head on over to broadsyoushouldknow.com. While you're there, click on over to the About page and read more about Michael and me, our bios, photos, links to all of our stuff, all right there. Are you following Broads You Should Know on social? We are on Facebook and Instagram, and watch us on YouTube at Broads You Should Know and Twitter at BYSK Podcast. To suggest a broad, fill out the form on our website or email us at broadsyoushouldknow@gmail.com. If you are a fan of this podcast, help spread the word about us. Share an episode with your friends or family or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That really does help new listeners to find us. Broads You Should Know is produced by me and edited by me with original music by Darren Callahan. Finally, if you really enjoyed this episode about Simone Biles, then I highly suggest you check out Michael's first episode with us on Vera Czeslavska, the Czech gymnast who protested at the Olympics and broke many records. We also have our other Olympian broad we've covered, Wilma Rudolph, this incredible runner, and we did do an episode on the Olympics broads of 2021. So check that out, and we'll see you next week for another Broads You Should Know.